نفس المعلومات. دعوني فقط أقول أن الكلمة الختامية للسيد رئيس الجمهورية سيد عبد المجيد تبون لخصت الأمور الأساسية التي نعتبرها أنها السمات المميزة لمخرجات قمة الجزائر، فسأمتنع عن ذكرها من جديد، والكلمة تم بثها مباشرة، وسنعود بطبيعة الحال أثناء الحديث التركيز على بعض منها. ولكن دعوني كمدخل أقول أن في مثل هذه المناسبات هناك الكثير من التعليقات أو التعاليق التي يتم من طرف الصحفيين والدبلوماسيين والسياسيين، وتوصف بطبيعة الحال القمة بنعوت مختلفة، أوصاف متعددة، وسمعت الكثير هذه الأيام حتى قبل انتهاء القمة. طبعا كان فيه من تسرع وأصدر أحكام نهائية في الموضوع، لكن من جملة كل الأوصاف المطلقة على هذه القمة أعتقد أن الكلمة الأمينة، الكلمة المعبرة حقيقة عن النتيجة، هي كلمة نجاح. نجاح للجزائر، نجاح للعرب. فيما يتعلق بالنجاح للجزائر، دعوني أقول أن مثل ما تابعتم الجزائر كانت حريصة على جمع كافة شروط النجاح، سواء ما تعلق بالجوانب التنظيمية اللوجستية أو ما تعلق بالجوانب السياسية الجوهرية. لست في حاجة إلى ذكر كل ما تم، أنتم تابعتوا كل شيء بدقة. شاهدت انخراط رئيس الجمهورية شخصيا من خلال لقاءات مع بعض إخوانه العرب، من خلال تسلمه رسائل من البعض الآخر من إخوانه العرب، وتابعتم كذلك المناسبات التي شرح مواقف الجزائر في لقاءات إعلامية. كما طبعا شاهدتم نشاط الدبلوماسية الجزائرية على مدى سنة كاملة تقريبا، والاجتماعات الوزارية لجامعة الدول العربية، حيث تم استعراض بعض الجوانب التنظيمية والجوهرية لعقد القمة. ونستطيع القول أن التحضيرات لقمة الجزائر ربما لم يسبق لها مثيل من حيث الكم ومن حيث الكيف، فهذا كله دل على حرص رئيس تبون وإخوانه القادة العرب على أن تكون هذه القمة التي تعقد بعد 3 سنوات ونصف من الانقطاع بسبب الكورونا أساسا. إذن هذا الحرص الجماعي بين الرئيس تبون وإخوانه القادة أن تكون فعلا قمة ناجحة من كافة جوانبها. العنصر المميز كذلك هو يمكن إطلاق على هذه القمة أنها قمة نوفمبرية بحيث السياق، من حيث تاريخها، ولكن كذلك من حيث الطموح الذي أردنا أن تتسم به.
We wanted this summit to enjoy. It's held in November because November is a symbol to challenges, overcoming the challenges, and November is a symbol also to our keenness on our unity. As President Tebboune wanted this summit to be called, and it is November also due to the desire to open promising horizons for the joint Arab action and making our commonalities prevail and be a priority that would enable us to overcome our differences
من شأنها أن تؤدي إلى تصدع العمل بيننا
and the fragmentation.
جمع
Our desire is to unite our word
من أجل
and to work together to achieve these objectives I've mentioned. So
نجاح للجزائر
it is a success, of course, for Algeria.
أخي
And excuse me,
أخصص كلمة خاصة هنا
mention here
الجزائريين
that we thank all the Algerians who contributed to organizing this summit,
خرطوا في الإدارات
those in the different administrations. Thanks to you all.
حتى للمواطنين الذين
And we'd like to thank even the Algerians, the citizens who were affected because of the traffic due to our presence to attend this summit. So we thank everybody for their contributions.
أرحب بها بإسهامات كانت
Thank you all,
دورها في إنجاح هذه
as this all led to the success of this summit.
الجزائريا.
So
النجاح واضح
the success of this summit is clear, the success of the state, the government and the citizens, and of course the success of the leader of this summit, President Abdelmajid Tebboune.
هو نجاح كذلك
And of course, this summit is a success for all Arabs
هم عرفوا كيف
because they knew
يجتمعون
how to convene
الكورونا بعد
after COVID-19, the pandemic, and they knew how to realize through their political sense the importance of their unity,
يدركون حساسية وخطورة
and they realized the danger of the regional developments and the international developments that this summit is held in its context. The participation was distinguished, the participation was great during the preparation for this conference and holding the summit. It was all constructive and everybody was keen on providing all what they can do to contribute to the success of this summit.
حرص المشاركون
And also all participants, on top of which
الجزائر
is Algeria, since it is the host country, along with the League of Arab States, represented in the Secretary General,
المجتهد
as well as the whole team and staff that worked.
حرص هؤلاء كلهم
They were all keen
أن ندخل
on
تطور
introducing a development in the methodology and the preparation for this summit.
من هذه الزاوية من
From this perspective, we can consider this summit
قمة التجديد
to be the summit of renewal,
ووضعت لبنة
and it has put the milestone
هي عملية التعزيز
for
والتطوير
developing
العمل العام
the joint Arab action.
ونتمنى بطبيعة الحال
And we wish, of course,
بقوة أن نجتهد مع بعض
to exert efforts together to enhance this new cooperation.
من هذه الزاوية
From this perspective,
نسجل
we can
جامعة الدول العربية
mention that the League of Arab States, this old organization, proved
قدرة التفاعل مع
the ability of interacting with the different developments and its ability to adapt with the developments of the joint Arab action and the ability of forecasting what might happen in the future, as well as the ability to play its full role
تأثير العمل العربي المشترك
regarding its influence on the joint Arab action and accelerating the development
وإيجاد الترتيبات العملية
and introducing practical measures
مواكبة
to cope with all these developments taking place on the international arena,
العرب
so that the Arabs
مؤثرة
would be
مفيدة
influential and would benefit from these developments and be capable of imposing our joint values as well as our joint interests. For all those reasons and for other reasons, we think that this summit would be written in history as a successful Algerian and Arab and international summit. I've seen the great attention from the international media and the international diplomacy of this summit, and the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, the head of the non-alliance movement, the head of the Commission of AU, as well as the Secretary General of the Islamic Cooperation Organization, in addition to a lot of officials and politicians who followed up the meetings and the ministerial presence. Without any further ado, I will give the floor to the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, Ahmed Abu Ghait, to give his remarks. Thank you, Mr. Minister. In fact, on the personal level, I wrote a number of elements that I've seen during this summit and the ministerial meetings, as well as the meetings of the envoys in preparation for this summit. Regarding the summit, I totally agree with you that it is a successful summit. And I personally found 17 presidents, heads of governments, presidents and crown princes who attended it, 17 out of 21. And the other 4 sent a very senior representation. So generally speaking, this is one of the most important Arab summits, and also an Arab summit that has a high level of representation from the Arab countries. This is a very important point. Secondly, the Republic of Algeria provided all the circumstances needed for the success of this summit, be it the preparations for it, very accurate organization, as well as the creative, objective initiatives to enrich the summit. The summit, as my friend Mr. El Amamra said, coincided with the 1st of November, the November Algerian Revolution. And yesterday, it was so good that all this strong participation from the Arab leaders and the foreign organizations were able to participate with Algeria in celebrating 68th anniversary of the Algerian Revolution. The summit and the meetings witnessed a great agreement. Like the other meetings, usually there are some reservations on a resolution or a paragraph of the resolution, but during this summit, there were no reservations made up till this moment. We might receive in the future one from here or there. For the first time, we did an experience, because in the advisory meetings held between the ministers of foreign affairs, it was mentioned in a meeting that was held last June in Beirut, that the summits or the ministerial meetings always repeat the same things and issue a lot of documents and reports and decisions, and maybe there is no need for such a system. And we should try as much as we can as ministerial meetings to adopt what was made before in one sentence only. And the summit, all the ministerial meetings adopted this idea. So on the agenda, there was the adoption of the previous resolutions made since 2019, the last summit in Tunisia, till today. And afterwards, a new resolution was updated to cover the national Arab security. So it was rather updated. The other update was the electronic work, that there would be no documents. Everything during this summit was automated. I personally observed that the interventions of the leaders tackled the need of enabling the Arab community to interact with the external world as an Arab bloc capable of communicating with the world, and to be considered as a bloc and not as individual countries. Another important remark I've noticed is that the economic dimension in the joint Arab action during this summit was a real concern. And the reasons are so clear. There is energy crisis, food crisis, water crisis, climate change impacts on the Arab states. So, since last June, during the consultative meeting, this was discussed. The Arab food security was considered to be a priority. So research was done on an Arab strategy for food security. And you will notice, those of you who followed the decisions of the summit will notice that we're talking about the offer made by Sudan to give the opportunity to plant in Sudan to provide the Arab needed food products, especially wheat, and they have talked also about automation of agriculture as well as rangelands development in the Arab region. These are all issues that enjoyed the attention of the summit. The leaders this time, and maybe this effort stopped 7 years ago, but this time the leaders had the opportunity to convene in a consultative meeting without papers. They sat together in a room not as big as the conference room, but they convened in a smaller room. Each leader with his foreign minister only. So they were able to discuss any topic.
القمة اهتمت بطبيعة
The
الحال
summit, of course,
بدول الأزمات
discussed countries facing crisis, be it Syria or Libya
سواء اليمن
or Yemen.
ودي دول معرضة
And
لأزمات
these
على مدى
countries that are susceptible to
الإضافة
crises over the last decade.
القرار المعنون
In
سيادة
addition to the main headline protecting the Arab national security, and this covers
في هذه
all
اللحظة
the elements that are enjoying Arab attention, like, for example, water security for all Arab states as part of the Arab national security,
وتكرار للقرارات التي
repeating
تناولت
the
هذا
decisions covering
الماء العربي
this Arab water security over the previous 3 years. I mean here, of course,
المطالب السودانية
the Sudanese Egyptian requests to reach a binding agreement for constructing any dam, and the Renaissance Dam constructed now by Ethiopia on the Nile Basin.
في حديث الوزراء وحديث القادة
In the speeches of the leaders, we found that they were asking for Arab solutions for the Arab problems, and that the external parties would stop intervening in the Arab affairs, and this was clear in a lot of speeches.
فيما يتعلق بالأزمة السورية
With regards to the Syrian crisis, Syria did not participate in the summit, but
على سوريا حديث هام للغاية
talking about Syria was a very important discussion.
هيلاحظ المتابع لهذه القمة ولقاءات
Those who follow this summit and its resolutions will notice that on the agenda all the Palestinian resolutions made over years
تكررت مرة
were repeated once more.
يسألني سائل
And some might ask me,
تتكرر قرارات
why are the Palestinian resolutions repeated and the rest of the resolutions were emphasized and endorsed in only one sentence?
جديد أو تحديث للأسلوب
As an update
لعمل وهو أسلوب
of these resolutions.
معنا
And this is something that might stay or change according to the experience we are doing right now. The answer to this question is Palestine is the pivotal
وللدول العربية
cause for the Arab countries and the Arab nations.
تصميم
So
إنه تستمر هذه
we insisted
القرارات
on keeping these resolutions and presenting them to the United Nations and the international community,
زي ما بيحصل كل مرة
as we do every time, to emphasize that the Arab region
خصوصا
is holding on to the Palestinian cause, especially that we found that everyone is talking about the two-state solution and the Arab Peace Initiative.
كل ما أستطيع أن
This is everything I can say,
سيادة الوزير
Mr. Minister,
طبعا
about the summit,
تحت أمرك في أي أسئلة
and I will be ready to answer any questions. Thank you very much. Let me ask Ambassador Abdawi to help us with the questions,
المدير العام للاتصال للترتيب
to organize the questions.
شاكر عبد الحميد وينك؟ حاضر
Okay, we'll answer the questions. We'll take your questions.
السفير عبد الحميد
Ambassador Abdel Hamid Abdawi, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, would you please join us and help us organize the questions and answers?
هكا افضل
سيدة الكريمة
أتمنى إنه
I wish
من سوف يطرح
that
سؤال
those who would ask a question
باللغة العربية
would
الفصحى
ask it
حتى أستطيع
in standard Arabic
في
so that I can understand the question and answer. Otherwise,
اثنين تقصد بإيه؟
I might ask you, what do you mean by this question? In fact, Mr. Ahmed understands the colloquial Algerian because he visited Algeria several times. The Secretary General of the League of Arab States, Your Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now, Netanyahu won in the Knesset elections, and he is the one who hampered the political settlement and rejected all initiatives, while the League of Arab States says that the Arab Peace Initiative is the main solution for any settlement. How can we deal with this in light of this fact?
سؤال موجه ليا.
The question is to the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. Let me answer this question.
سؤال نجاوب سؤال يعني القضية
The
الفلسطينية
Palestinian cause
مضى عليها ما يقرب من
have been there for about 100 years.
في نجاحات.
There are some successes and some
أنا
losses.
لدي اقتناع
I
مؤكد
am convinced
فلسطين سوف
that Palestine will be victorious at the end. You might ask me how.
أقول لك
I will tell you,
الشعب الفلسطيني
the Palestinian
عدد
people
سكانه المقيمين ما بين
residing between the river and the sea
حاليا في هذه
right now at this moment is about 8 million Palestinians. The Israelis are about 7 million Israelis.
المنطقة كلها فيها
In the whole region we have 15 million.
قد تضطرنا الظروف إن نحن
Maybe the conditions might make us wait for 10 or 20 years
استمرار النضال
with the continuing resistance. We might reach 10 million Palestinians and 12 million Palestinians. And then,
مش انتوا بتقولوا دولة ديمقراطية
aren't you saying a democratic state?
بتقولوا إن كنتوا
Don't you say that you are a democratic state, so there is the right to elections?
تختاروكوا
So,
أغلبية في
we as a Palestinian majority would elect a Palestinian prime minister, and then the Palestinian people will prevail.
دولتين هم بيخطئوا خطأ
They are committing a grave mistake by what they are doing. The second point,
إنه فلسطين
I wish
إسرائيل
that the Palestinians of Israel would participate in the elections held yesterday and succeed in getting 15 seats to impose on this Israeli right wing to change its vision, but this did not happen. And we need to blame those who did not make the Palestinians participate in those elections.
المصداقية وبكل الأمانة للاقتناع
This is my conviction.
نتحداكم في انتخابات
We need to challenge them in elections as a majority.
الزمن معنا
But time is at our side.
شكرا هدوء من فضلكم الرجاء من الإخوة والأخوات
Would you please be quiet and introduce yourself
الإعلامية
and the media
ثم الوسيلة الإعلامية
organization you represent before asking the question? عادل المحروقي from the Chinese International Television CGTN. My question to both the Minister and the Secretary General of LES. While LES is supporting joint Arab action, there is partnership with China, and there are news announced by Saudi Arabia about an Arab-Chinese summit. So how do you see the importance of this summit while the world is witnessing challenges and the Arab world is witnessing challenges of food security?
تسمح لي الجامعة العربية
Let me say that the League of Arab States has a number of fora.
العربية مع الاتحاد الأوروبي
One with the EU, one the League of Arab States with Federal Russia, one with India, one with Japan, one with China,
بتعقد مع أمريكا اللاتينية
Latin America,
مختلفة
and there are different summits that are held
اجتماعات وزارية على
or ministerial meetings on that level.
قمة قادمة
There is a coming summit in Riyadh
ديسمبر
on the 9th of December between China
والدول العربية
and Arab countries.
هو مسار ناجح للغاية
And it is a very successful path.
في تراضي صيني
And there is an Arab-Chinese agreement, Indian Arab, Japanese Arab agreement
التعاون والتنسيق
on cooperation and agreement and coordination between the Arab bloc and these countries. So in this context comes the summit.
شكرا.
Thank you.
خليني إضافة ممكن
I have something to add.
لا مش
لا لا لا
مش
من فضلك من فضلك.
تسمح لي سيادة الوزير
Excuse me,
تسمح لي
Mr. Minister.
أجاوب عليك
Let me answer the question.
بالنسبة لموضوع الشراكة
As for the Arab-Chinese partnership, I wanted to add that the main thing for us at the end of this Arab summit is working on applying all that was adopted by the Arab countries to support development and Arab partnership, and of course achieve what was agreed upon regarding the economic integration and establishing a joint market, as well as opening the borders for economic integration and investment. The rest is just an addition that we welcome and work on preparing so that the Arab nations would benefit from such partnerships. There are Arab African countries who came in strategic partnerships with China and other countries, and all these economic results are things that we recognize its importance and work on its success. And I think that we decided to continue our work in the context of these partnerships and achieve balance of interests and convince the partners to work more on their contribution to developing the Arab peoples and having common political stances, especially related to essential things like supporting the Palestinian just cause on the international arena in cooperation with a number of partners. And we wish that they all would support the idea of giving full membership to Palestine in the United Nations. And we will coordinate with those partners regarding economic affairs as well as political ones on the Arab agenda.
في سؤال على
There is a question
التدخلات
about the intervention that you've talked about.
أنا عاوز أقول لك
I would like to tell you,
لصاحب السؤال
for the one who asked the question,
القمة تناولت
the summit
تدخلات
tackled the interventions
في قرار
in two aspects. There is a resolution under the title Protecting the Arab National Security, and it refers to the foreign interventions, and it refers also to protecting the Arab water security, and it is very clear in this resolution.
ولكن
Yet,
مثلما أشرت
as you mentioned,
تأييد وإعادة تأكيد
there
القرارات
is
التي صدرت
a re-emphasis on the resolutions that were made over the past 3 years since the summit in Tunisia up till today.
حتى أطراف
And it mentions the names of the intervening countries.
تم الإشارة وتناول
So this point was mentioned and covered. There was a question about Libya. We did not answer the question about Libya.
معلش اوكي يرجى يعني اعطائي فرصه لطرح السؤال.
Would you please give me the opportunity to pose the question? Thank you, Mr. Minister and Mr. Secretary General.
التي كانت أكثر
We thank you for the good organization of this summit. Thank you, Algeria, for holding the summit. I want to talk about the topics raised during this summit
بما يخص الشارع العربي والمواطن
and
العربي
the concerns of the Arab citizens through economic and trade cooperation between the Arab countries. This is a very important concern for the Arab citizens. My question to the Minister and the Secretary General: 4 months only before the new summit next March. So 4 or 5 months are not enough, and Algeria want to be able to manage the resolutions for a whole year because it's only 4 or 5 months. And did you agree on hosting the new summit in which country? Excuse me. The Arab summits are held always before the 30th of March. And the coming summit would be held in Riyadh before the 30th of March. Algeria exerted a very strong effort during this summit, and I want here to talk about the ideas of President Abdelmejid Tebboune that were presented to the presidents and endorsed by them, and the ministers of foreign affairs are assigned to studying them and developing the study needed with the Secretariat of LAS to implement these ideas. And these are ideas that develop the work of the League of Arab States, because it talks about the civil society and its role in cooperating with the governments to achieve their objectives, because the civil society has a role here, as well as issues about youth and coordinating the youth activities between the Arab youth and their governments and the League of Arab States, and how the youth can contribute to building the Arab communities through their ideas. And also the business community in the form of small and medium enterprises of the youth. These are all very important ideas, and all leaders supported them because they were presented by President Tebboune in the meeting this morning. So this is an Algerian contribution. Before the 30th of March, we find the work of the Secretariat, and it will be presented to the ministers, and the ministers might ask for further studies to be presented to the next summit to be implemented.
للأخت هناك
Thank you, the lady over there.
لا أنا لا أتحدث إلا اللغة العربية في مؤتمر للجامعة العربية.
In a conference for the League of Arab States, I speak in Arabic only.
سؤالي مساءكم سعيد أولا.
Good afternoon. أحلام الجنباز from the Algerian radio.
إذن سيدي رئيس الدبلوماسية الجزائرية سؤال موجه إليك.
A question to the minister Ahmed Gamaz from the Algerian radio. Mr. Minister, Algeria declaration commended the proposals of President Abdelmejid Tebboune and described it as constructive to support the role of the League of Arab States in preventing and settling disputes. And also in the declaration, they will adopt the proposals of the President to enhance the innovation and the youth participation in the joint Arab action. So the question to the Minister, can you give us more information about these proposals, especially those related to the youth, especially in light of the generations communication forum that was held in Algeria? As the Secretary General said, that these are new constructive proposals made by the President to help us modernize the joint Arab action represented in the League of Arab States, and the President was keen that his proposals would cover all these important points. Peace and security is a very important element, as it is a must to work on it. To find peaceful solutions for the Arab disputes between countries or within countries, as well as the solutions to them. As we witness now a number of conflicts and disputes in Arab countries, and we are trying to achieve peace in them through dialogue and through national reconciliation, as well as other means of diplomatic successful action. And the proposals of President Tebboune has an economic dimension, and we mentioned that these aims at achieving what was agreed upon by our presidents in the previous summits and the economic conferences. Those resolutions and decisions that were not implemented up till now. Excuse me, Mr. Minister, one of the proposals President Tebboune is suggesting a committee to be formed to support the president of the summit whenever he wants to depend on its ideas and make recommendations, because the presidency of the summit has authorities and mandates that would enable the president to move in any direction through the support of the leaders. So this is a very good idea, and it needs putting a statute for this group of wise officials and how they are going to be selected from the Arab countries. And this is what the Secretariat and the Ministerial Council would work on. Thank you. Now we'll give, yes, to build upon what was mentioned by the Secretary General, this idea comes within the framework of proactive diplomacy. So it is identifying the tensions before their deterioration. So it wants to make use of the experiences and the Arab influential figures to move and work upon the request of the president of the summit to identify the difficulties and suggest what might help in a peaceful settlement for this. Mr. Minister, haven't you noticed that the media in Algeria is very greedy? It's ambitious rather. No, not ambitious, it's greedy. For 40 minutes we've been talking and you do not find it enough. Let's give the opportunity to the right side of the room. علي مرجابي from Abu Dhabi TV. Today the Arab leaders finished their 31st summit and what are the mechanisms to support the pan-Arab trade and the work of the League of Arab States and the Arab countries to give the Arab countries the opportunity for a real trade exchange that would support the Arab economies, and this would reflect, of course, on the political relations.
يعني أنا لم أستمع إلى السؤال بدقة ولكن
I did not hear the question accurately, but let me tell you
العالم العربي
that the Arab world
عالم تقريبا
is almost
نفس الجغرافيا
enjoying the same geography,
مسار
the same path, so its production is almost the same. And this interprets that the pan-Arab trade is not of a big volume, but the free trade zone is moving forward. And while doing so, it is facilitating for the Arab manufacturers and producers to achieve this pan-Arab trade. There would be a complete tax system for imports for this free Arab market and free Arab zone. And there is a resolution about what was achieved since 2019 summit up till 2022 summit. There is progress achieved. Peace be upon you. Sumaya Mansouriya from Algeria Radio. We would like to congratulate you and congratulate Algeria for this great summit. Algeria is the summit of Palestine through following up the interventions of the different leaders and heads of delegates. We've noticed they talked about the Algerian declaration and the Algerian agreement for the reconciliation between the Palestinian factions. What are the mechanisms of implementing it to support the Palestinian cause? And another thing on the agenda of the summit is the reform of the League of Arab States. What are the proposals presented by Algeria in this context to improve the performance of LAS and to have positive impact on the regional and international levels? One last question. Can we consider Algeria declaration a road map and a new strategy for the joint Arab action, especially in light of the current circumstances?
خليني جانب فقط أرجوكم
Excuse me.
فقط من ربما السؤال
Let me answer part of the question.
وتناوله هو أنه الجزائر كانت حريصة
Algeria was keen
على توافقات
on building agreements on different levels. Algeria took enough time and we discussed with everybody,
المواضع اللي كانت المواقف في البداية
and even in some
عملنا
issues when we find that there are different opinions, so we worked on building bridges between these different stances, and we came up with the stances agreed upon
وأحيانا بالإجماع
through
ليس هناك اعتراض
consensus and majority in some cases.
أذكر على وجه الخصوص
And I can remember in particular that
أنا من ممكن
Algeria declaration
ينجز من طرف الوفد الجزائري
could have been done by the Algerian delegate, and Algeria would shoulder the responsibility of this statement, but we discussed with the ambassadors, the ministers, and the Arab leaders,
منتوج
and it was the outcome of this participatory work.
للجميع
يعني سيادة الوزير
Mr. Minister, the day before yesterday, there was a meeting at the level of the ministers for 2 hours to discuss the elements
إعلان الجزائر
of Algeria declaration that was supported then. So a lot of efforts were exerted, and after this we discussed with the delegates
نصوص اقتراحات تحدثنا
their suggestions,
كل واحد في النص
and each one
تلاه نيابة عن
found
السفير العرباوي كل الوفود
in the statement read by Ambassador El-Arabawi that it is a balanced statement that reflects the spirit of the summit as well as the different concerns. Peace be upon you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كمال سويك من التلفزيون
I'm speaking from Canal Algeria.
سعادة السيد الأمين العام.
Mr. Secretary General, since World War II, the world did not know crises like the ones we are witnessing today. The Arab citizen pins a lot of hopes on the resolutions of the summit. So the question, what are the introduced mechanisms to enforce these resolutions? And did you introduce an agenda to apply them? The same question to Mr. El Amamra. Would you please answer in French for the
هو خليني أقول أنه فيه تركيز
channels?
كثيرا على آليات
We focused on mechanisms and frameworks. The first thing is the political will, and this was crystallized during this summit. The Arabs realized
تركوا ضرورة العمل
the importance of joint Arab action
ضرورة الاعتماد الجماعي على النفس
and depending on oneself
الأوضاع الجديدة التي تسمح للجانب العربي
to create the things that would enable the Arabs to impose their principles. As for the mechanisms, these are produced through ordinary action within the framework of the Arab League. There were mechanisms that were introduced a long time ago, and we need to support them. And there are other mechanisms that should be changed. And the political will is there, and the leaders are keen on studying during their sessions these mechanisms so that the resolutions would respond to the aspirations of our peoples, and it would always be in line with the ambitions of the Arab peoples. Thank you.
تفضل أخ.
A question over there.
أشرف.
سؤالي لسعادة الأمين
The question to the Secretary General.
شوية لو سمحت.
قناة الراي
Rai channel regarding Algeria declaration, it talked about Palestine. Do you have a mechanism or a ministerial council to follow up this declaration? And regarding the reform of the League of Arab States, we want to know what are the similarities and the differences.
أنا عاوز أقول لك
I would like to tell you,
اللجان في لجنة
there is a committee,
عربية
an Arab committee,
مشكلة من
a
6
permanent
دول
committee from 6 countries to deal with the Palestinian cause, and there is a Jerusalem committee under the League of Arab States, and there is suggested committee to support the presidency of the summit that would be established in the near future after consultations with the Arab countries.
ده شق
This is one part. The other part,
أنا أسميه
I call it
تحديث وتطوير
updating and modernizing the League of Arab States
وتعزيز دور
and
الجامعة.
enhancing its role.
مشروع
There is a draft resolution
قبل اجتماع القمة
endorsed by the summit.
صدد تحديدا يعني هو مسار اجتهاد وزي ما قال
It is a path, and as the minister said, it's a matter of political will. If there is a will, there is a way to enforce these resolutions.
في قرار بيقول
There is a resolution
المطالبة
that
بانضمام
says
فلسطين إلى الأمم المتحدة.
calling for the membership of Palestine in the United Nations. What is the path? The path is that the Arab countries and Palestine will go to the Security Council. It's the entity that should make a decision before the membership of any party. So they will go to the Security Council. The member states in the Security Council, would they all approve? We have doubts. And this Palestinian effort started 10 years ago, and it did not achieve the objective. Why? Because there is a country that has a veto right, uses this veto against this membership. So the Palestinian Authority and the State of Palestine has to resume the General Assembly round about Palestine and go to the General Assembly and get a resolution with full support, but the General Assembly gives just recommendations. So it's just an effort, and things need patience and continuous work to achieve interests that might not be met today or tomorrow, but in the future they would be done.
شكرا
Thank you, Mr. Minister, Mr. Secretary General.
باش ترجمناه من اللغة الفرنسية للغة العربية لأنه نحن نبث في فرنسا باللغة الفرنسية.
We broadcast in France in French, so we will translate the answer into French. When we talk about the Arab Summit in France, the question is always why the League of Arab States is called the League of Arab States
الدول العربية وليست البلدان العربية أو الجامعة العربية.
and not the Arab League
الاتحاد الأوروبي
like the EU.
والقصيرة.
The second thing,
هو الاتحاد الأوروبي اسمه إيه؟
what is the name of the European Union? It's called the European
عاوزه يبقى
Union.
الاتحاد العربي يعني.
لا يعني ما يقولش الدول الأوروبية لو سمحت. والسؤال الثاني هناك جاليات.
The second question, there are a lot of expats in France who are interested in the Arab issues. So do you have an institution that cooperate with these expats, especially that those expats are professors and
يعني هو
can
لو
cooperate with the
تسمح
League of
لي-
Arab States?
لو
Excuse
تسمح
me.
لي. دائما الكثير من المتابعين، ودعني أتحدث
Let me
مليا
hear.
بعض التوسع. يتحدث المتابعين للعمل
Those
السياسي
who follow the Arab
الأفريقي
political European and African
وكثيراً ما أسأل
action ask a
أنتم في
question.
الجامعة العربية
You in the League of
مش
Arab
زي
States, why aren't you like the
لماذا
European
أنتم
Union?
يا عرب لستم مثل الاتحاد
Why
الأوروبي؟
aren't you like the EU? Why don't you have a commission
دول ملتزمة
rules binding to the member
سهل
states?
جداً.
The answer is an easy one.
فلسفة إنشاء
The philosophy
الدولة
of
العربية
establishing the League of Arab
فبراير
States
مارس 45
in 1945
إنشاء
was
جهاز
establishing
تنسيقي
a coordinating body
لمواقف الدول
for the
العربية
stances
وليس
of the Arab countries and not for
سياسات
imposing
محددة على
specific
الدولة
policies on the
العربية. كان
states.
موقف كان في طيارين
There were
بإنها
two
تكون منذ البداية
attempts. One,
مثل الاتحاد
to make it since the beginning like the European Union, and the other was asking for the League of Arab States to be just a coordinating body.
والتيار الذي ساد
And what
وانتصر في النهاية أو قوبل
was
هو
accepted at the end was that it would be a coordinating body to achieve coordination and integration between the Arab stances and not to unify all policies and all stances. Despite that, the League of Arab States is not just a political action. It has 13 ministerial councils. Ministerial Council for Health, one for education, one for transport, one for social affairs, one for foreign affairs. All these ministerial councils seek to unify the policies, the legislations, the tax systems, the ports systems, a lot of efforts, and there are also regional thematic organizations working in the context of the League of Arab States. These organizations have a role, a clear role, and many of its officials are here attending this summit. So if you want to develop the League of Arab States, you can develop it, but with the consensus of all Arab countries. And we need to distinguish between the League of Arab States as a league for Arab states and the United Nations, for example, and the UN Charter. The UN Charter starts by saying we are governments and peoples, while the League of Arab States is governments of member states. This is the difference. President Tebboune, for example, is adding a new dimension, the civil society. We did not have the civil society in the League of Arab States before.
وشريك
as a partner
علاقة ما بين
that can establish a relation
الحكومة والمجتمع المدني.
between the government and the civil society. So these are all things that are under development and update. Thank you. We need to thank you all for your concern and participation. Thank you for your professionalism.
أنت طماعة جدا.
سؤال أخير لو سؤال
نحن سعداء
الأمين العام مع الوزير
والنبي نساعدها.
مع الوزير سؤال من القناة العربية.
زعلانة.
طيب
عشان خاطرك وعشان خاطرك.
We will give you the opportunity to ask your question.
صبرا
مع الوزير
صبرا.
قولي سؤالك.
What's your question? Fajal Husseini from news agency Beirut. Most of the Arab countries came back to Damascus, Syria, and we have seen also diplomatic missions.
طب أنا عاوز أقول لك حاجة أهم من
Why Syria is not back to League of Arab States? I would like to tell you that today,
نتيجة
as a result
لانتشار للأسف الشديد
of
وحزن وألمي لظهور الكوليرا
the appearance of cholera
والأرض السورية في المخيمات.
in the camps in Syria and Lebanon, today we sent a message
وكالة الصحة العالمية
to WHO,
وطلبت المجتمع الدولي
and I called upon the international community to send
اللقاحات
as much vaccines and medications as possible for Lebanon and Syria, as we did with Yemen.
إنه شلل الأطفال يعود مرة أخرى.
Polio unfortunately appeared again in an Arab country, Yemen.
هو ده السؤال.
And this is the question. The answer is the League of Arab States and the Secretary General of the League of Arab States wrote to the international community asking it to mobilize all resources for this.
إن احنا نتكلم هنا أو هناك. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much. What did LAS do for Syria to come back as a member in the League of Arab States? Because there are Arab countries that put Syria under siege.
معالي الأمين العام
The Secretary General of the League of Arab States and Mr. Minister Al Arabiya News has a question. Let me reply to her question.
ما دام هذا طلب قرر الأمين العام
Since the Secretary General decided that we would take her question,
سوريا
Syria
موجودة في
is
الاستمرار
there in Algeria.
في قلوبنا
It's in our hearts, in our conscience.
تعاطف وتضامن الشعب الجزائري مع الشعب السوري الشقيق
And the Algerians support the Syrians as they supported Algeria during the independence revolution. As you can see, Syria is in all the streets of Algeria through the Syrian flag,
عاصمة مثله مثل علم كل دولة
like the flags of all Arab countries. And Syria is there in the meeting, as the Secretary General said.
وكان لي الشرف أن قابلت
And I was honored to meet President Bashar al-Assad recently,
طلعت على استراتيجيته
and he introduced to me his strategy
التلاقي
regarding
العربية وهي التي
the cooperation between Syria and the Arab countries.
لا يستهان بها فعودة سوريا أو شغل سوريا من جديد لمقعد
For Syria to take its seat again in the League of Arab States
شغل سوريا لمقعدها أمر طبيعي
is something normal,
إن شاء الله
and it will be achieved soon. And as for Algeria, we are glad with our dialogue with our brothers in Syria, and we are confident that Syria
التاريخ ومن
has the history and the ability to come back with an added value to the joint Arab action.
الحلول السلمية للنزاعات
And this is through the peaceful solutions for conflicts and disputes in the Arab region
سلام
to achieve fair peace and security in the Middle East,
سوريا شقيقة للجولان المحتل.
including Syria getting back the occupied Golan lands. Thank you. Thank you.